So have you ever talked to a mom when she's in the middle of doing 5 things? She's listening, but she's also, unpacking the kids' lunch and helping the kids with their homework and responding to a text from work, stirring the pot or whatever's on the stove and listening to you. And she's saying all the right things. Yep. But you just kind of know in your mind, you're like, she hears me, but she's really not listening to me. And so, you might lean in and kind of look at her in the face and say, are you hearing what I'm telling you? It's a rookie move, right? It's not a pro move because it doesn't go over well, right? She kind of gives you that look of like, are you serious? Are you serious right now? Don't test me. Like, she's taking care of the home, right? Taking care of the kids, taking care of work, taking care of the moms on the text thread, the soccer moms that are, bouncing around. And she's holding all these things together. And we call that multitasking, right? Moms are amazing at it. They really are. And even though psychologists tell us it's really not possible, you really can't do it, moms have mastered this, and they have done it well over years, so much better than most guys. But, it's not just a mom thing. It's something that we all do from time to time. And we try to, life is busy. We have different balls in the air, and we're trying to keep them all up and keep them going. And that's fine for life. The problem is when we try to do that spiritually. We do that in our spiritual life, when we try to kind of take care of all the things in the world and then the things with God. And we don't call that multitasking anymore. In fact, in the scripture that we have today, he calls that double-minded. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing when we are trying to do 2 things at once spiritually. When we have 1 foot in the kingdom of God and we have 1 foot in the world, and we try to do both. It's being double-minded. The image that I have is it's from a Christmas movie. I know it's Mother's Day, it's not Christmas, but a great Christmas movie called Elf, right? You remember Buddy the Elf as he leaves the North Pole and he comes to New York and he's experiencing all kinds of new things. He sees an escalator and it freaks him out. But he has 1 foot on the ground and 1 foot on the escalator, and remember what happens? And pretty soon he's doing the splits, and it's funny. Splits are always funny when people do it when they don't prepare for it. You might see the guy who has 1 foot on the dock, and 1 foot on the boat, and it just keeps going and all that. And it's funny. It's funny in movies. Funny when you see that. It's not so funny when we're doing it spiritually. We are not to be double-minded. We're not to be divided. We are to have one focus. Remembering who we are, that we have been rescued from the kingdom of darkness. We've been transferred and brought into the kingdom of light. We are the children of God. We live with Him in His kingdom. We represent Him. And so why do we try to do both? We say things like, Lord, I love you, but we also love the things of the world. All the new things and all the things that are popping up around us. We say, Lord, I trust you, but we also say, but I got to take care of myself. We need more money. We need more of these kinds of things. Lord, I'm going to follow you, but I'm really concerned on how others think of me. How do they perceive me? Do they like me? And you see where that can go wrong, where that can be a problem with us spiritually. It can kind of stunt our growth when we try to do that. So that's why, as we start a new series, we are looking in this book labeled James, the letter of James, and we're calling it Undivided. It's pictures of wholeness in the letter of James, because he is talking to the church. It's talking to his congregants that he used to pastor when he was in Jerusalem, and now they have been spread out. They are all over the world and all different places, and we're seeing that it's growing. More people are coming to Christ, but he has this concern. This concern is that they are trying to do both. They are living in the world and living in the kingdom, and he's seeing that it is not working. And so he's going to write this very practical letter to the church and including us, saying, please do not be double-minded. Do not live with a foot in both. Instead, be united. Have one focus, and let that focus be firmly on God, not the things of the world. And so as he presents this letter, he's going to start off with a bang, and he's just going to go right at it. He has this one verse of like, hey, I'm James, I'm the servant of God, I'm the servant of Jesus. I'm writing to the 12 tribes that are scattered out everywhere, and then he jumps into it. And the first thing he tackles, the first thing that he sees us divided on and not understanding and not getting is the issue of trials. The trials that are in our life. The question is not if you will have trials as a Christian, but it is when you will have them. How long, how many? It is a part of our life. It's part of our narrative. And as Christians, this is part of our training. We should not ever be shocked and surprised when we have trials that come into our life or into our brothers and sisters' lives. But they are not accidental either. They have a purpose, a divine purpose. And part of being united and focused is understanding what that is. And so that's what we'll look at today and hopefully leave here with a better understanding of why these things are in our life and what we can do about it. So we just have 2 points today, but the first point is this, that God uses trials to grow a mature and undivided faith. Okay? God uses these trials to help us grow and mature in our faith. Right? He doesn't waste them. These aren't pointless, but he's using these things. You know, every hardship tests and strengthens our faith if we bring God into it, so that we can be whole and complete followers of Christ. Now, as we look at this, I just want to be really clear that there's no joy in the trial. These trials, you're going to see this word joy and trials in the same sentence. The joy is not in the trial. It's knowing that God is with us in the trial. So keep that in mind as we read these verses. Look at James chapter 1, verse 1 or 2, 3, and 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So as James is starting this letter, he's writing to his beloved congregants. He wants to get their attention. He's like, what is my hook? What will get their attention? And he says, I got it, trials. We're going to talk about trials. And this is how I envision it in my mind. He has his paper, he has his pen, and he starts writing. And he's like, all right, consider it joy. No. Consider it all joy, pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, period. And he steps back and he says, that's a good hook. That's a great sentence. And he celebrates. Maybe he gets a cup of coffee and he comes back and he looks at it again and he realizes that has got to be one of the worst sentences in the history of time. The worst sentence in the Bible. I mean, think about it. Is that something that you would put up over your kitchen, on the wall? Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials. Trials of various kinds? I don't think so. I mean, that sounds like masochistic. That sounds like mean and cruel. That sounds like, hey, God's going to make your life suffer, but you better just smile. You better just smile and grin through it. I don't think that's what he means. And so in my mind, I see him taking his pencil and the eraser and taking that period and erasing it and putting in a comma and changing that. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Period. Now that's different, isn't it? I mean, the one is just, your life is going to stink. You're going to have trials. You just better be happy. But the other is saying, no, you're going to have trials, but in that you can have joy. Why? Because God is using this to develop you, to make you more like Christ, to bring perseverance into your life. So let me kind of break this down a little bit, and we'll kind of work through that and what he's saying. But the first word he has here is consider, right? This is a thought word, all right? It's a mind word. And that's interesting that he uses that, because in my experience, and maybe in yours, when we have trials, what drives the boat here? It's our heart, right? Your heart is heavy. Your heart is downcast. Your heart is grieved. Your heart is the one who's in charge here. And if the mind is engaged, it's kind of under direction of your heart. Your heart's kind of saying, all right, I'm grieved. Mind, why don't you think, give us some reasons of what we need to be weary of? What do we need to be anxious for? And the mind can go to work, and it stays up all night. You know that. You know how the mind just works and just starts thinking of all the things that could go wrong, all the trouble, all the different scenarios. Gets you anxious and all worked up. But he's saying, I need you to engage your mind in this. I need you to stop and think about it. But change your perspective. Have a different POV, right? A different point of view. Not from the way the world is and the way that you've grown up and the way that you might hear it from your friends. But I need you to think about it the way that God sees it. Because in the world, when we have sufferings, how do we respond? Like a good life, a really happy life has no problems, right? It's all good. We call it, maybe you've heard this phrase, living our best life. Yeah, right? Where she's living her best life means that there's no problems, there's no trials. But all that goes wrong when there is a trial. And in the world, you just got to get rid of it as fast as you can. Avoid it, ignore it, take care of it. Get out of that as fast as you can so you can get on to your best life. The world has no answer. It's just, these are terrible things that you got to avoid. But we as Christians, we can take this too. If we don't really think about it, we can just say things like, the Lord doesn't ever listen to me. He doesn't care about me. Maybe He's punishing me. He's making me suffer for whatever I did. So that's how we can think about it. But he's saying, I need you to change your perspective. I need you to think about this differently. I need you to think about this in a way that God thinks about it, from the kingdom point of view. And that's very different. Right? The trials are still painful. They still hurt. We still grieve. We still cry like Jesus did at the funeral of his friend in John 8. We still cry. We still feel the weight. But we got to know that they're not pointless. They're not things that we're being punished by, that God is trying to get us for all those things we did when we were 13. That's not the way it is. But instead, God is saying, but I'm taking these things and I'm using these things to purify you, to help you grow, to help you have perseverance. And later he talks about maturity and be complete. In other words, it's saying that God is sovereign over these things. And for whatever reason, He's let these things into our life for our growth, for our maturity. Right? That's what we have to consider. He says, consider it pure joy whenever you face various trials. Again, that can sound off if we just leave it there, but it's consider it pure joy, all joy, complete joy. Right? That's hard. It's hard to do, but we'll get to there. He says, whenever there's various trials, that's like many trials. I'm glad that he didn't give us one example, whatever that example is, because we would read that and we'd say, that's not my situation, so I don't have to have joy in these. I can complain all I want. He doesn't. He says, various trials, like all the colors of the rainbow or all the colors in a Crayola crayon box, like all of these. All right, so the poverty, injustice, conflict, sickness, grief, all of those things that are big or they're small, or they're short or they're long, things that we have done, like mistakes we've made and we've kind of made our own trial, or the times that we're just a bystander. We're just standing there minding our own business and these trials come into our life. Like all of these matter. In all of these, we have to consider pure joy. And that's hard to do, and that's not usually the first place we start. And I will admit that. I don't start there. If I ever get there, it's a few days into this. But that's the point, is to see these things from a different perspective, saying whatever these trials are, all the different varieties, bring them before the Lord and have some joy. Now, how can we be serious about this? Is this really what he's saying? But yes, the reason for joy is this, because the testing of our faith produces perseverance. Right? Like I said, trials are not joyful in and of themselves. But they can bring some joy because we know that God hears our prayers and is working these things out in our lives. Have you ever prayed? How many of you guys have prayed a prayer like this, where it says, maybe you do it right in the midst of some great worship or some great devotion time, and you just say, Lord, I just want to be more like Christ. Anybody there? Like, make me more like Jesus. Like, take my heart and make it like his. Many of us have prayed that before. And that's why we can have joy, because God has heard your prayers, brothers and sisters. He has heard them, and he's going to answer them. And he's going to answer them by allowing these things into our life. That sounds hard, doesn't it? That really sounds like, are you scratching your head? Because many times we think, hey, I prayed that, for God to make me more like Jesus. And then he just brought all these trials and all these things that are causing me anxiety. He didn't answer my prayer. He's making me suffer. But could he take these things, these challenging things, and bring them into our life so that we're refined and so that we grow and so that we become mature and complete? Right? That's how God works. This is how the Christian life works, that we grow through trials. Right? You can grow through good times, right? You get the job or you get that huge tax return. I'm not saying you can't grow in your faith through that. But usually, it's when you get the bad news and when the hard things happen and when you don't know what to do. That's when you come to the Lord and you fall on your knees. And sometimes the only things we can say is, Father, please. Father, help. Please, Lord. And let me just tell you, that is a prayer of faith. That is the cry of the righteous. That is the cry of the person that's saying, Lord, I want to become like Christ, but I need you to be here and help me. This is how we become mature and complete. So that's how James says it. What does Paul say? Paul kind of says something similar. If you looked in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 and 4, he's talking about faith and about boasting in faith, and then he says this. He says, not only do we do that, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. Like, are you serious? Paul, glory in our sufferings? James, you want me to have joy in my trials? Like, what kind of Kool-Aid are you guys drinking? Is this for real? And this is hard for us in America because we have this image that the blessed life is an easy life. But in the kingdom of God, it is not always that way. That the blessed life is one that is becoming more like Christ. And we become more like Christ when we fall on our knees. And we have no other answer than to ask him. And that often happens at times like this. It's just like if you want to make your muscles stronger, you have to put them under a trial, right? That trial's the gym. And it's the barbell, and you just think, I don't think I can do this. And you just lift, and you lift, and you lift, and I did it. I got through that trial. And you keep doing that. Your muscle breaks down. It hurts. It's sore. But what happens? A couple days later, it starts to get stronger and repair and rebuild. And faith is the same way. It's our muscle. that it works. It gets stronger as we work it out. But when was the last time we worked it out? When we brought it before the Lord and just saying, I am struggling here, but you can help. You can help and bring this faith, make it stronger if we bring it before Him. It takes time. Often takes a lot of time. And again, that's a hard thing for us in America, right? We like things quick. My wife and I have been married for 22 years. And if you go back to 2003 and you look at some of the appliances that people were giving to brides and grooms at their weddings, there were two appliances that we received. It was the George Foreman grill. Okay? If you want one, you can go to any thrift store and get one right now today. But it was a George Foreman grill, and it was the crock pot, and we got both. The George Foreman grill, if you remember that, it was a small little grill. You could take a piece of frozen chicken, put it on that thing, and in 7 minutes, it would be ready to eat. It'd be ready. It was really fast. The crock pot, though, totally different, right? You're taking your chicken, you put it in there, you put all the other spices and vegetables and juices and all that, you turn it on, and it's not 7 minutes, and it's not even 7 hours. It's like 10 or 12 hours, right? You go to work, you come back, the house smells great, it's almost ready, and then you when it's time, you open it up and you see that chicken is tender and all, it's just flavorful and it smells good. Which one would you want if you had both of those? The crock pot chicken that's just flavorful, or that little George Foreman chicken? It's white with some black lines on it. It's like, you'd want the crock pot, I think. I'm just going to say, yeah, I think we want that. There might be a few of you, yeah, I don't like any vegetables, keep them out, I get it. But go with me. You see where we're going? Like the crock pot is like, that's way better, way more mature and better. But we in America, man, we like the George Foreman. We like and now it's like the Instapot and the air fryer, right? So those are now. But we like the microwave kind of thing. But they're fast. They're not good. And with these trials, like sometimes we would just want them over. Like, just get me through it. And we do whatever we can to get past it. But we know when the Lord's working, when the Lord's behind it, it might be long, it might be slow. But we know that He's using that to produce something really fantastic in our life, to make us complete, mature in our faith. So we want to live our best life. But I'm going to say that's not exactly what the goal is for the Christian. The goal for the Christian is not to live your best life, it's to live a faithful life. And to see God in the midst of these things and to enter into that process with Him. It's hard, it hurts, we'll cry, but we know He is there with us. So that's the next point. As we move on, He doesn't just leave us there and just say, just figure it out. He's saying, there's some help. There's some help for you. And so as you turn into verse 5, we notice that God gives wisdom to navigate trials with an undivided heart. Look at verse 5. It says, if any of you lacks wisdom. Now just let me translate that. That's you all do. Okay, you all do. There's nobody that says, actually, I don't really need it. I kind of know what's going on. I'm fine. No, he says very polite, just saying, this is all of you. Okay, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. That's pretty amazing. He's saying, if you find yourself in the trial, what should you do? You come to God. You ask Him. It's an imperative. Okay? He's saying it's like you have to. You have to ask God. Right? We don't have that muscle memory to kick in yet. We're still growing, we're still learning, and so we have to come to Him and ask. And He tells us, give us what we need. Because when we have times like this, we're confused. We don't know what happened, and we always see things as from our own perspective. We don't have knowledge, we don't have perspective, we don't have experience. Right? We don't know why this happened, and all we can see is from our point of view, and we don't really have a lot of experience, but God's got all that. He knows what's going on. He sees all the perspectives. Christ has experienced all that. And so He gives to us. How does He give? He gives generously. Generously. Just think about that. Not stingy. Not like when you go to the buffet and there's that guy there that just gives you just like this small piece of prime rib, you know? Like, can I get more? No, only one slice per person. But you gave me a small slice. I have a whole lot of plate left. No, can't do it. Got to save some for everyone. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I'm giving it generously to you. And he says, I give to all people. I mean, you think about that. It's not just the super Christians he's talking about. It's into all of you. Not those of you who have the American Express card or the American Airline Lounge card where only you can go into those special places. He gives it to all. Everyone who's seeking help, you and me. And he'll give generously. And he says, I love this. This is my favorite line. And he gives to all without finding fault. Without finding fault. I mean, think about that. A lot of the trials that we find ourselves in are because I did it to myself. Right? My poor decisions. I didn't think about it. I didn't have wisdom. I got myself in this trouble. And that's what parents say. You got yourself into this, you're going to get yourself out of it. But he didn't do that. He doesn't say, hey, it's your fault. Sorry, nothing I can do. Because I'm going to give generously to all of you without finding fault. That's grace. That's love. But not automatic. You have to ask for it. Come to the Lord and ask. And here's what I would say. In my experience, when I ask, I don't get a lot of answers. And it doesn't get fixed right away. But here's what I get. I get a God who says, you come to me and I'll walk with you. You draw near to me. I will dwell with you. We will go through this together so that I'm not alone. I'm not by myself. But he's with me. And that's the best place to be. The last part is he tells us, he says, when you ask, don't doubt, don't be double-minded. Okay, he says, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave on the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord, but such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. And here's what he's saying. He's not saying that we don't have our questions. I think we all do. We all have questions. We all have that question in the back of my mind, like, why, Lord? Why is this happening? Why is it happening to me? Don't you care? Do you hear me? Are you listening to my prayers? We have those questions, and we might call those doubts. That's not what he's saying, though. What he's talking about is that one world, one foot in both worlds, right? Where we're trying to say, yeah, Lord, I trust you, but I really don't. I don't trust you, and I got to figure this out myself. That's the double-mindedness. Looking to him, but really looking to the world for our answers. And that's what he says. And it's not that we can't get wisdom from others, and we can't ask, and we can't read books and all that. That's part of, I think God can do that. But that's part of him, what he's doing. And so he's saying, when you ask, come and just believe, and just trust him. And let him meet you there. And so your faith would grow. As I mentioned a couple times that we often don't have the muscle memory, and that's something we build. But there's been some people, that have been mature in their faith. They've walked this journey a long time, and they start to develop that, and they start to say, hey, God, I remember back then, I wasn't sure, but you were faithful. You met me there. And because of that, you can meet me here. And because of that, I know that I can trust you in the future. And you can have that journey. And that's what it is. As we go through these trials, we learn, we become mature in that way. And so instead of giving another kind of illustration or application, I want to give a testimony. It's not mine, it's one of our moms in the church, some of you know, who's been here in this specific congregation, this church, this building for a very long time, has grown up here. And I want you to hear her story. It's about 9 minutes, and we'll put it up here on the video. But I want you to look for these themes where God has been faithful in the past and where she's reminded of that. And that dwelling with the Lord, how important that is. So, would you do me a favor and watch this as we watch from one of our moms of faith, Carol Ann Curley.
Well, this year has been an incredible journey and adventure for the Curley family. My daughter, Kristen, my youngest daughter, Kristen, and her husband, Sam, were expecting their first child in March. But at church on January 24th, Saturday night, Kristen said, "Mom, I have this weird pain in my leg." And Sam decided to take her in to have it checked out. Everything ended up being just fine, except when they went to release Kristen, they said, "Oh, we need to take your blood pressure." And it was off the charts. And the nurse said, "Oh, honey, you cannot go home. You need to stay and have this baby." So they admitted her and did some blood work and found out that Kristen had something called HELP syndrome, which is a severe form of preeclampsia. And so they knew that they were going to need to deliver this baby early. Immediately, Bob and I called people to pray. We texted our small group. I texted Ethan and the church staff and asked for prayer. And I called my parents. And my dad said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well, Dad, this is not my first rodeo." Because you see, 28 years ago, when I had Kristen, I had a similar story. I also had preeclampsia. I went in for a routine appointment. My nurse practitioner, who is a Christian, said, "Carol Ann, nothing was wrong with you on paper, but God told me that something was wrong with you and the baby." I went to the hospital, everything checked out, and right before I left, they took my blood pressure, and she said, "Oh, honey, you're not going anywhere. You're going to have this baby." And then I had many more complications along the way. Ended up with an emergency C-section. And as they were lifting Kristen out, she was completely entangled in the cord. And the doctor said, "Oh, she would not have made it 6 more weeks." And so Bob and I named her Kristen, which means chosen. And her middle name Rose, after my mother, who is a woman of great prayer and great faith, who loves the Lord dearly. So then fast forward up to 2021, my oldest daughter, Kaylee, and her husband had their first child, Eden, which means God's delight. When Eden came into the world, she was diagnosed with double outlet right ventricle, which means her pulmonary and aorta were coming into the same side of the heart. It's a serious heart defect, and she also was diagnosed with Jacobson syndrome and Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, both 11th chromosome syndromes. It was a very hard time for the family. A lot of questions of why is this happening to us? And we are so grateful. They didn't even know if Eden was going to make it, but she made it. In February, she was born. After Kaylee had delivered her, Kaylee went into heart failure. And we're so grateful to say that God spared both of their lives. Eden needed a G2 surgery at 3 months and made it through that. And then at 6 months, she needed open heart surgery. That open heart surgery, I had a crisis in my faith. We had been through so much, and I was just kind of frantically, I was worried. What if God doesn't show up? What if Eden doesn't make it? Isaiah, it was so comforting to me, where it says, "When you go through the deep waters, they will not overwhelm you. And when you go through the fire, you will not be consumed. For I am the Lord your God, and I am with you. I am your Savior." And it was such a beautiful time of just knowing that God was there. His presence was with us. And that was such a comfort to our family. And we are so grateful to say that Eden's heart surgery went so well that she will never need another heart surgery. They were able to sew a mesh where it needed to go, and her heart is doing great, and we're so grateful. Okay, now back to Kristen. She is laying in a hospital bed at Hoag Hospital, and her life is in the balance, and they need to deliver this baby, and they are moving up the surgery because her liver enzymes again are rising up, and Bob is driving from work on Monday morning quickly to get there, and Sam and I are standing over her, and they have her all ready to go for surgery. And I looked at Sam and I said, God is here. We need to pray. And when it says that God's peace passes all understanding, it is so true. The nurses would come in and say, you two are so calm in here. And we just were because God was there. One psalm that was so dear to me at this time it's Psalm 91. And it says, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, just dwelling in the fact that he is our Most High God. He is our El Elyon, which means he is the mighty creator of the universe. He created Kristen. He created Novely. He knitted her together in her mother's womb. If we dwell in the shelter of the Most High, who God is, our mighty creator, will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Everything we need for life, he provides. And as I sat there in that room and prayed over her, I was thinking about how my prayers were different than when I had her and when Kaylee had Eden and the open heart surgery. I prayed for God's mercy, and I prayed that he would save us. And I prayed that with Kristen too, like, Lord, have mercy on her, save her life, save Novely's life. But it was also like an openness of just gratitude, of submission to God's will. I just knew she was in his hands, and if he chose to take her, we would be grief-stricken. But he loves Kristen, and he created Novely. She's fearfully and wonderfully made, and I just surrendered. During the C-section, when they were delivering Novely, just as Kristen 28 years ago was delivered just in time, saved from that cord, Novely was delivered just in time. That placenta was tearing away from the uterus, and the surgeon said Novely wouldn't have made it the last 7 weeks. And it takes my breath away to think about, God, you are just so amazing, even in your timing of all of this. And Sam said to Kristen, he said, okay, we're going to name her Novely, which means new light. And they chose the middle name Rose, which is the same as Kristen's. And Kristen said to Sam, like, why my middle name? And Sam said, well, it's going to be part of her story of God's faithfulness through the generations. As God saved you and brought you into this world, so God saved Novely just in time. God calls us to remember what I have done. Remember the steadfast love of the Lord. I want to tell the story of God's goodness and his steadfast love. I want to tell it to my children and my children's children. I want to tell it to you, how faithful God is. And so this is my little band from when I visited Novely in the NICU. In my Bible, I still have, this is Eden's hospital band. God is good. His steadfast love remains forever. And we are so grateful, and we just proclaim his goodness.
That's pretty amazing, huh? Should have passed out Kleenex. I'm sorry. I heard you sniffing. But I talked to Carolyn, it was a couple months ago, and it wasn't even about this. It was just health stuff. And she said those similar things, like, we're not worried right now because we've been through this. God has been with us every step of the way. And like, I said, when I heard that, I'm like, we got to tell this story. And you have to hear it. And I know that you're happy you did, because it's hearing those things that encourage us, because, the trial is still there, right? I mean, I know Carol Ann prayed and Bob prayed and the whole family prayed, and I think God answered a lot of those prayers, but there were some that were still left unanswered or the trial for us. That question said, what happens if God does not show up? What if he's not here? But you heard her later on in saying, we know that God is here. And that's part of the maturing that happens through these trials. And so thank you, Carol Ann, for sharing your story. And I hope that encourages us. A lot of us, we might say, well, what about me? Where am I at? I've got some things going on in my life too. And, the same God that was there in all of those situations is right there in your life. He's right there. Look for him. Come to him. Ask him. Ask him for help. And remember, he gives generously to all without finding fault.